The movie begins with the view of a well-valued painting amid an exquisitely furnished house. A well-toned man makes his way over to his passcode-protected closet, trying to decide which one of his Santa suits to don. He finally settles on one, and the rest of the movie unfolds. Santa spreads the holiday cheer at Capital Finance's Christmas party. The owner, Alex Sykes, gives a speech at length, and oblivious to everyone, Santa makes his way up the stairs to a safe concealed behind a painting. He hacks it open to reveal the original painting. Taking it, he leaves in its place a piece of coal. The painting is safely within his sack, and Santa makes his way to leave. However, he is halted by one of the party guests, who requests a photo. They take a couple of selfies together, and he leaves. Somewhere else in the city of LA, a tastefully dressed Harper makes her way through the streets, stopping to leave a Santa donation. He thanks her, asking what she would want for Christmas, but she states what she wants, she can't have. Santa doesn't believe this, however, and she claims she would want Van Gogh's Starry Night. Santa still doesn't believe her, and she repeats that what she wants, she can't have. Santa encourages her to have faith in the magic of Christmas, and they part ways. Harper heaves a sigh as she continues down the road, halting to search her purse for something. Just then, a man snatches it from her, and she follows after him. She tackles him to the ground, lets him off with a warning, and then retrieves her purse. Chris, who had been watching from behind a dumpster, comes over to tell her that was impressive, but unfortunately gets knocked to the ground as well. He explains he had wanted to offer help, and Harper apologizes, helping him up. He asks where she's headed, and she tells him it's an office holiday party. They exchange greetings, and she continues her way. On second thought, she returns, asking what he'd been doing behind the dumpster anyway. He quickly excuses that he'd spotted a lamp in the dumpster and thought it valuable. Harper doesn't see the appeal though, and she wishes him a good night. Harper arrives at the Sykes' residence. Getting mistaken for any other party guest, she is asked to exit the area, but she reveals she is an FBI agent with the art crime team. She introduces herself as Agent Harper Winslow, excusing her fancy attire, and the officer on scene introduces herself as Detective Lopez, putting Harper up to speed with the case. They ascertain the stolen art piece was worth about $15 million, and Lopez wonders why Santa had stolen the replica as well. At the mention of a Santa, Harper is intrigued. She recounts how Santa had made off with about $30 million last Christmas. Harper heads over to the safe and finds the coal Santa left behind, signifying such people were on his naughty list. Harper asks if there was any footage, but Lopez tells her that Santa had hacked all the security cameras, although a guest did manage to get a selfie with him. She adds that the party planner was already tracking him down, but Harper assures her it won't prove any good. Alex is perplexed as to how anyone could have hacked his state-of-the-art security system, but Harper deduces this Santa must have been hacking the system in real time somehow. Back at the police department, Lopez whines all about Harper and how she had hijacked her investigation to the police captain. The captain tries to assure her that Harper is one of the best in her field. Lopez begs to differ, downplaying art theft as a serious crime. She goes on about how annoying she finds the know-it-all Harper, who just conveniently shows up behind her. The captain introduces himself to her, and she informs them both that this Santa is on the FBI's most wanted list, as art theft is also considered a crime against the county's cultural history. She offers the 2 donuts, and Captain Matthew is delighted, readying to savor the sugary delight. Lopez doesn't get what the fuss is about, and announces she also has treats of her own. Matthew doesn't have anything nice to say about Lopez's baking though, and finally, she gives in, trying one of Harper's donuts. Harper and Lopez take a look at the selfies the guest had taken with Santa. They zoom in to find he has on customized smart glasses, and Lopez suggests they see if the lab can be of any help with this. Harper grabs one of Lopez's cookies, as Lopez confirms she was right about the dud end with the party planner. She narrates how Santa had infiltrated his way into the party. Harper tells her the cookie's amazing and grabs some more. She explains she would be going undercover to find the stolen art piece. Lopez asserts Harper won't be leaving without her, but she refuses. She claims she couldn't let Lopez jeopardize her undercover identity, but after a brief conversation, is considering taking Lopez with her. She visibly checks her out, trying to ascertain what undercover role would best suit her, and finally, comes up with an accountant named Sophia. They come up with a plan. Harper is Rachel Fox, an art expert in search of an expensive art piece for her boss, and Lopez, her accountant, whose job is to make sure she doesn't go over the budget. The plan seems solid, and they head out. Harper and Lopez arrive at a local art gallery, executing their plan as discussed. However, the salesperson informs them they do not deal in pieces at such price ranges, referring them to Quinn Carlisle instead. Lopez inquires how they can get in touch with Quinn, but the salesperson informs them Quinn only deals with clients within her network. Harper admires the lady's ring, complimenting its style, and the woman thanks her. After a bit, she opens up about a small holiday gathering Quinn would be hosting at her gallery, and Harper thanks her for this information. Outside, Lopez expresses surprise that Harper's little compliment back there worked. Harper tells Lopez she'll be headed to the museum for a bit of thinking and goes off. Harper sits, admiring one of the museum's paintings, when the lamp man from the other day walks in, settling beside her. She recognizes him, and he introduces himself as Chris North. He engages her in an avid conversation about the painting, Harper describing what she sees. Chris draws that she must know a lot about art, and she recounts how her mother had been an art teacher, inspiring her love for art. Chris also recalls that his granddad had been into art as well, although in a somewhat unconventional manner. Harper is amazed that they keep running into each other, and Chris asserts that it's the universe of connectivity. Harper is confused, and Chris explains, stating his belief that she was somehow meant to be in his universe. Harper, however, reckons it to be a coincidence, which Chris doesn't believe in. Their conversation is short-lived, however, as Chris's phone chimes, forcing him to retire from the museum. He notifies Harper that their time spent together was enjoyable, and invites her to meet up again at the museum next week. Harper and Lopez arrive at Quinn's holiday gathering, and Harper spots St. Nicholas's pipe a little while off. She begins to tell Lopez all about it, and unsurprisingly, Lopez outrightly lets her know she finds this annoying. Harper admits she knows her conversations tend to get irritating at times, but can't help but share her knowledge with everyone. Lopez then reveals she had thought working with Harper would be awful, but finds it's actually turning out to be fun. Lopez tells Harper she can refer to her as Carly, but draws the line there, clarifying this didn't mean they were partners or anything, and they totally agree. Without missing a beat, Carly asks Harper about her love life, and they both laugh. Harper admits having a relationship amidst her job has proved challenging, and Carly agrees, adding that it would be nice to have someone. Harper hints at the captain for starters, but Carly quickly dismisses the idea. Harper only takes this as a confirmation though, further teasing her. Shortly after, the pair spot Quinn, and she moves over to introduce herself. They introduce themselves as well, Rachel Fox and Sophia Valenti. They go straight to business, revealing their purpose for attending the gathering, and inquiring if she could be of help. After ascertaining their price range, Quinn concludes she can find something befitting for their boss, and they thank her. Harper enjoys the rest of the gathering, going through the gallery and finally settling on a piece set on the wall above. Unknown to her, her wanted Santa has arrived and quietly observes her from behind. At the mention of a Santa, Quinn is surprised, as she had never hired one, and Harper is made aware of her surroundings. The guests notice the missing St. Nicholas's pipe, and Carly and Harper begin a foot chase on the Santa. He makes his way up to the balcony, bolting the door behind him, and before they can catch up with him, he and the pipe have fled the scene. The next morning, Harper is at the police department, and she brings treats. As always, the captain is right there, and he thanks Harper, making away with one of the treats. Harper brings up her thoughts on Santa always leaving coal at the scene, Lopez pointing out that it naturally meant one was on Santa's naughty list. Harper notes she is right, believing some of his victims may have been considered naughty. She pulls up an article revealing Capital Finance had just laid off some of its workers, and tells Carly it's time to head out again. At the home of a former Capital Finance employee, Carly and Harper begin questioning. The man shares that he's been working at the company for almost 15 years, but was cruelly laid off just 2 months before his pension eligibility. He adds that he wasn't the only one, and expresses hope that they are here on this matter. Harper informs him this isn't the case, as they were here on the investigation of a theft from the Sykes residence. The man is upset at the mention of his former employer's name, outraged that their investigation was to help him, and not his unjustly treated employees. The man then angrily calls off the interview. Carly and Harper head over to Quinn's gallery. In conversation, Harper asks if the thief has been caught, but Quinn says no. Harper believes the prized pipe must have been insured, but Quinn assures her she's discreet in all dealings, never really involving third parties like the police or insurance companies. Quinn heads straight to business, asking about the nature of their purchase once more. Harper repeats it's a very high-end vanity purchase for her boss, and Quinn presents her with some recommendations. Harper expertly identifies the art, much to Quinn's surprise, but is of the opinion her boss would prefer a female artist, noting some of her repute. Quinn understands, asking for another week to come up with something, and Harper agrees. Seated, Carly compliments her gallery, and Quinn begins a narrative on how she had taken what once was a women's shelter and transformed it into the glorious gallery they now see. Carly asks about the women's shelter, but Quinn barely knows. With pride, she adds that it was the owner of St. Nicholas's Pipe who had helped with the whole renovation. Carly and Harper leave the gallery, finding Quinn's personality rather odd. Carly receives a text from forensics. It states that they've been able to trace Santa's smart glasses to a company called Smart Tech. Carly and Harper determine that's not too far and decide to head there. At Smart Tech, they are asked in and led over to the director, who, coincidentally, just happens to be Chris. Harper is surprised to see him, even noting the refurbished lamp on his desk, and explains to Carly that they keep running into each other, Chris calling it the universe of connectivity. Harper then states what brings them to his office, noting they are officers of the law. On listening to their explanation, Chris draws that they are hinting at one of his workers being a likely culprit in their crime. He labels this preposterous, assuring them his workers go through the strictest of background checks. Harper, however, informs him they'll be the ones to determine that, and with his permission, have a look around. All done, Harper stands admiring a painting in his office. Chris explains it was a gift from his granddad, who had taught him to value beautiful things, resting his gaze on Harper with the last statement. Carly loudly clears her throat, reminding them of her presence, and Harper formally draws their conversation to a close. As she makes her leave, Chris invites her to a small fundraiser that evening at the museum where they met, and Harper promises to be there. Outside, Carly teases Harper about the romantic tension between her and Chris back there. Harper denies this, claiming Chris was a suspect, and this was only a part of her plan to find out what he was up to. Meanwhile, Quinn gets one of her men to do a check on Harper's Rachel Fox and finds that she checks out. They discover a profile covering her impressive art background, but Quinn still wonders why she's never heard of her before. She asks him to do another background check, confirming if she was really who her profile claimed she was. That evening at the fundraiser, Chris and Harper meet. Chris reveals the fundraiser was sponsored by his company as a way to support cancer research. He takes her through the paintings and shows her his favorite, which he's even made a bid on. They engage in small talk, and Harper reveals both her parents are deceased and that she was also adopted. On a lighter note, she jokes that they might even be related. We sure hope not, Harp. Chris adds a little note on his grandfather, describing how his obsession with art had often caused tension between the family. Chris then asks Harper for a dance, and they hit the dance floor. Being an FBI agent, Chris asks why Harper hasn't searched for her birth mom. Harper claims she doesn't want to, but Chris assumes she is just scared of loss, perhaps. Harper reckons his deduction may be right, but Chris asserts that loss is only a part of love. Harper doesn't agree, however, arguing that the right kind of love lasts forever. Chris asks her to define such love, but Harper assures him he'll know it when it happens. As if proving her point, Chris leans in to kiss Harper, but she pulls away, stating that she had to leave. He tries to get her to stay, but she insists, making her way out. The next day, Harper arrives at work with treats, as is her custom, and settles at Carly's desk. Carly asks how the meeting with Chris went last night, sweetly mocking her, and Harper confesses she finds him kind of charming. She insists she isn't falling for his good guy act though, but Carly doesn't believe her, laughing at this. The Capital Finance employee from the other day shows up at the office and seems to be in a great mood. He shares that all 60 former employees of Mr. Sykes at Capital Finance had just received $250,000 settlement from the North Pole. He'd come expecting an explanation, but finds Carly and Harper are just as surprised as he is. They bid him a Merry Christmas as he exits, and consider what he's just shared. Harper does the calculations and finds a total of $15 million was spent compensating those 60 workers, the exact worth of the painting stolen from their former employer's residence. Carly and Harper laugh at the absurdity of it all, a modern-day Robin Hood dressed up as Santa. Harper figures that if the Capital Finance employees got compensated, then they should be looking into the women's shelter next. After a quick research, Harper comes up with the name of the former executive director of the shelter, Rose Clemens, now working at a hospital, and they go to meet her. They arrive at the hospital and find Rose. They introduce themselves, explaining that they wish to ask a few questions. Harper notes how festive the hospital appears, and Rose reveals they just received a large donation of gifts and were trying to get them wrapped before Christmas. They offer to lend a hand, and Rose happily accepts. Harper asks more about the donation, and Rose tells her they'd received about $50,000 worth of gifts. Harper deems it a very large donation, but Carly reminds her the pipe was valued at more than $1 million. Rose hears them and believes she might know what they're here for. She tells them that her other project, the women's shelter, had also received a donation of about $1 million alongside the other donations. This confirms their suspicion, and they confess they are here about the donation, and Rose seems disappointed. They ask about her former shelter, and Rose explains that Quinn had somehow won a petition against them, granting her ownership of the place. They also inquire who had made the donation, and Rose's simple answer is Santa. She even gets the note he sent and reads it to them. Harper then asks how the donations were received, and Rose describes trucks bringing in the gifts, as well as the card, as a monetary donation was simultaneously made into the shelter's account. She also adds that they had received an email from the North Pole, notifying them of the transfer, and Harper asks for a copy of the email, as well as her bank account number. Rose is just devastated and wonders what she will tell her staff, but Carly and Harper assure her not to worry. Carly and Harper consider the investigation, and Carly reckons another missing piece to it is the individual who's buying the stolen art, who, she reasons, may be Miss Carlyle. Harper judges she might have to pay her another visit, but this time alone. Captain Matthew steps in, and Carly teases him for staring, but he claims he's there for the cookies. Unfortunately, Harper had just taken the last one, but Carly shared hers with him, jokingly reminding him to remember this at the job review. Matthew assures her she always exceeds expectations with him, and with that, he leaves. Carly blushes and Harper teases her, but Carly waves her off, hurrying her for her visit with Quinn. Finally, Harper gets her revenge. Chris and Quinn sit together in her gallery discussing a Hawkins piece, noting that the artist also designs jewelry. Just then, one of her men comes to inform her that Harper is there looking for her, and she asks about her background check. The man informs her that everything checks out, and Quinn deems it a relief, initially finding her suspicious. She asks him to send her in, but she's already come in herself. Harper and Chris set eyes on each other, tensing, and Quinn wonders if they perhaps know each other. They both deny it though, Chris introducing himself and Quinn making him out to be one of her valued clients. Chris bids them goodbye with Quinn planting a kiss on his cheek before he leaves. Quinn marvels at how the two have never met, the art community being very tight-knit, but Harper simply reiterates they haven't met. Anyways, Quinn informs her she may have found a befitting piece. She shows her a Hawkins, precisely the one taken from the Psyche's residence, currently in a gallery elsewhere, and Harper is pleased. Quinn lets her know she'll have it in a few days, although the price is a bit higher than their budget, but Harper agrees, and they shake on it. Out of earshot, Quinn asks her man to follow her and find out more, just for extra measure. Chris receives a knock at his door and finds it's Harper. She explains she'd just come by to thank him for not blowing her cover back at Quinn's, and finds he's dressed in just shorts. He explains he'd just returned from his morning swim, and asks her in. He dons a towel and takes a seat opposite her as she begins her accusations. She outrightly tells him she knows he's Santa, and he's been stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Chris acts confused, guaranteeing that it was more like Robin Hood, but Harper reckons their Robin Hood Santa may just like wearing red, referring to the red shorts he has on. Surprisingly, Chris reaches under his towel, making off with the shorts and proving a point as Harper turns away embarrassed. She then asks him about an offshore account identified on the server as the North Pole, wiring large sums of money into accounts of individuals in need, and Chris still plays dumb. She then asks how he knows Quinn, and Chris reckons they have this conversation sometime later in the day, and he texts her the address, but Harper clarifies it's an investigation, and not a date before leaving. Harper makes it to the agreed location and meets up with Chris. He notifies her that he has a big secret to tell her, and she reminds him of his rights. He shows the vast area, citing that it's the perfect place to come for a Christmas tree, before proceeding to cut her one. Harper stops him though, informing him that this was private property, and he could therefore take no tree from it. Chris ignores her, continuing felling the tree, and Harper warns him to stop, threatening to arrest him. Finally admitting that he owns the property, he urges her to calm down, going in for a kiss. After a bit though, she pulls back, and Chris tells her he has something to say. Harper asserts she knows his confession, claiming that he is Santa, just as he confesses he loves her. Both are shocked, Chris surprised that she should think he brought her here just to confess he was Santa, and Harper surprised that he loves her. He tells her he's loved her since the very moment they met, and knows she can't deny the feelings either. Harper admits she feels it too, but stresses that she's a cop, and he's their major suspect. She makes her way over to her vehicle and drives off. Quinn's handyman informs her he's followed Harper, and that she won't like the news. Quinn guesses rightly that she's a cop, and he adds that Carly is too. He also shows her a photo of Chris and Harper kissing, stating that he was right about Chris. and Quinn thanks him. Carly and Harper sit at a restaurant, discussing the progress of their investigation. Harper tells Carly about Chris's confession, admitting that she may love him as well. Carly is stunned. She asks Harper if she'd told Chris this, adding that she thinks she should, but Harper argues that he's their suspect. Jokingly, she adds that Harper ought to take herself off the case as well, and Harper shoots her a glare. Carly laughs at how happy she would have been saying that about a week ago, but not anymore. She proceeds to point out the obvious, that both Chris and Harper love each other, and advises Harper to follow her heart. Harper returns the advice, pointing out that both Carly and the captain have feelings for each other. Carly tries to shut her off, claiming hers was different, as the captain was her boss. Harper suggests she could always transfer to a different precinct, and just then, her phone rings. It's Quinn on the line, and she is happy to inform her the painting has just arrived, and that she could come get it right away at one of their warehouses. She calls out the address, scheduling the exchange for later that evening, and Harper agrees. Harper drops the call and tells Carly the exciting news. They rejoice, but Carly soon remembers their earlier decision to drop the case and follow their hearts. Harper guarantees her they'll follow through with that plan, but after they solve the case. The captain monitors the operation from the base and has undercover men on standby. They survey the area and report back to him via their transmitters. Carly and Harper make their way into the warehouse, and Matthew warns them to be careful. Harper calls out for Quinn but doesn't get a response. Matthew, however, spots movements on his monitor and alerts them. Simultaneously, Carly and Harper hear the clanging of metal and pull out their guns. Carly stays back, while Harper moves over to confront the individual. She has him at gunpoint and orders him to drop the painting and turn around, but finds it's Chris. He tries to explain that Quinn had set them both up, but Harper can hardly believe him. Carly calls for backup, and Chris makes a run for it. Harper tries to stop him, but he gets away, and even backup doesn't spot him. Harper blames herself, and even worse, discovers the painting recovered was only a fake. Harper stands in the art museum, admiring a painting, and a young man comes over to her, handing her a note. It reads that he is indeed her most wanted Santa, but that the art he steals is already stolen, and that all he does is return it to its rightful place. So in a way, he jokes, they're both working for the art crime team. He adds that the people he steals from know the art's stolen and are otherwise terrible people, so he sells their art in the black market, using the funds to compensate those they may have wronged. In his opinion, it's a win-win. He also adds that he does this as a way to make amends for what his art thief grandfather had done in the past, revealing the paintings she had seen that day in his office were also stolen, but that he had returned them to their rightful place as well. Meeting her, he says, has forced him to look at his life differently, even considering finally putting away the Santa suit. But not before he finishes up one last thing. The note is signed, "Love, Chris." Harper returns to the police department seemingly excited and does some quick research on her system. As expected, she finds that St. Nicholas's pipe, as well as every other piece of stolen art, has been returned to the various museums from which they had been stolen many years ago. That said, Carly and Harper determine the only bad guys left are the operatives in the black market, like Quinn. Just then, Carly's phone chimes, alerting her of another Santa burglary, but this time to an artist's private studio. The artist, Selena Hawkins herself. The pair make it over to Venice. They meet with Miss Hawkins, and she shares that the thief, dressed as Santa, had broken in overnight and taken only a pendant she had made years ago. Harper notifies Miss Hawkins that the FBI has been on the tail of this Santa for quite a while now, and assures her that the necklace will be found. On an unrelated note, Harper tells Miss Hawkins how much of a fan she is, recounting her mother's love for her work. Carly inquires if Santa had left anything behind, and to their surprise, he had left sweet Miss Hawkins a candy cane. She is also certain that she can identify him, recounting how a nice young man had come asking a few questions some days back. Carly shows her a picture of Chris, and she confirms it's him. Harper wants to know what kind of questions, and Miss Hawkins reveals they had pretty much boiled down to her past. They ask if she can share that with them, believing it may be of help. She begins, revealing she had gotten pregnant as a student, but was not ready to be a mom, and had given up the baby for adoption, a very difficult decision. This man, she says, claimed to have known who her daughter was and would arrange for them to meet. Carly, who had noticed the energy at the table, asks Harper what's going on, and Harper confesses she believes Chris may have found her birth mom. Later, at the office, Matthew tells Carly and Harper that he's just got a tip on the stolen necklace from their Santa. It happens that tonight, at her gallery, Quinn will be selling the necklace to him, all courtesy of Santa, under his new alias, Matthew Sterling. With that, they go get the captain a befitting suit. Matthew arrives at the Carlisle residence with Carly and Harper on standby. Quinn lets him in, and after pouring him a drink, goes straightway to business. She hands him the prized necklace, reminding him of the agreed price. She then jots down the account number, handing it to him. He pulls out his phone, pretending to make the transfer, but texts Carly for them to move in. They drink to a successful business deal. Then the captain surprises Quinn with an arrest, Carly and the remaining backup coming in, and they take Quinn away. The team makes their way back to the office, and the captain congratulates them on a job well done, wishing them all a Merry Christmas. Harper has something for Carly. She grabs a mistletoe from her desk, hands it to her, and encourages her to go for Matthew. With a deep breath, Carly goes over to give it a shot. She goes over to his office and informs him she'll be making a transfer. The captain is confused and asks why, but Carly just pulls out a mistletoe above them, kissing him. He asks her to stand down, and Carly apologizes. He says for now he's still her boss, but is happy with her transfer if she is, and she embraces him in a kiss. Harper, who watches a while off, is happy for the pair. She looks down to find a present with her name on it, and opens it to see it's the painting from the other day. She calls out Chris's name, expecting him to be near, but no one answers. Harper makes her way home, stopping to leave Santa some dollars. She soon realizes it's Chris, and he takes off the beard and hat to reveal himself. He confesses he's given up all his old ways for her as he kisses her. She thanks him for the painting and pulls out another surprise. It's Selena's necklace, and Harper wonders how he's got it. He explains Miss Hawkins wanted her daughter to have it and handed it to her. Harper can hardly still believe Selena's mother, and Chris goes in for another kiss. Chris takes Harper to Selena, who embraces her, acknowledging she'd known it was Harper from the moment they met. Selena tells Harper she's always loved her, and Harper assures her she made the right decision, giving her the most wonderful parents. Selena is overjoyed, and she thanks Chris for reuniting them. With that, Chris leans in for one last kiss.